Yo, what's up? Happy New Year. I know there's a lot of people who just started their New Year's resolutions. Some people wanted to lose weight, some people wanted to be more outgoing, and if you're anything like me, you wanted to make some more beats. But I understand that some people that are just learning FL Studio can look at the plugins list and think that it's a bit bloated, so I decided to go through all of the stock plugins in FL Studio and rank them in tier list order for your viewing pleasure. So my tier list sections are very simple. It's going from S tier to D tier. S tier, at the top, Beast, my favorite plugins. These are the best plugins that FL has to offer. A tier, very good. Self-explanatory, definitely plugins you should use, but they do have some minor setbacks sometimes. B tier, cool, nice to use. These are plugins that work for everyday use, but I might pick something else over them occasionally. C tier, kinda niche. These are plugins that are good to use or have one very specific use. These are good for very specific purposes. And D tier, not the vibe. Usually stuff that are too much of a hassle to use, so you might be better off using another plugin. And finally, there's the ones that I never use. I'm also sticking to generator and synth plugins for today. If you like this video, I'll do a follow-up with just the effects. So without further ado, let's make this list. 3X Oscillator. I am a huge fan of 3X Oscillator. If you know me, you know how much I use it throughout the channel. It's simple to use, it sounds great, and it's super versatile. You can make cool R&B synths, heavy basses, and even drum and effect sounds. It's got a nice set of oscillators and different shapes to choose from, and I think it really does work well as baby's first synthesis plugin. But because it is so simple, it does lack a lot of modern onboard effects, and you have to use other effects to really bring out the best in 3X Oscillator. Overall, it's a great plugin, but it's not great on its own. A tier. Next up, Autogun. Autogun is a bit of a meme in the FL Studio community. It's a sound generator with over 4 billion presets. I'm not kidding. Now don't get me wrong, there are some really good sounds in Autogun, but you gotta be a madman to sit there and sift through all of it to find something. It's fun, but it's not time efficient. It's damn near a gag plugin. I'm putting this in not the vibe, but you could probably argue it's kinda niche. Bass drum. Bass drum is a drum synthesis plugin mostly designed for kick drums. I think it'll work fine if you're making a house drum kit, but it does sound a bit dated. Personally, I never use it. Beat map. Beat map generates sound based off of an image, using a color algorithm to manipulate sine waves. You can get those eerie, grainy, and atmospheric sounds. It's perfect for creepy and scary textures. But I also like that you can upload your own images too. For example, if I use this picture of the rapper Cochise, I could play some chords and it sounds pretty cool and glitchy. But yeah, I think it's kinda niche. How often am I gonna use Cochise to make a synth? Boo-bass. A lot of people like to meme on boo-bass. They think it doesn't sound good or it doesn't sound realistic. To be honest, boo-bass sounds fine, it gets the point across. And if that's all you have, don't sweat it. But yeah, you could probably find a better bass sound at Flex. It's cool. Dashboard. Dashboard's usually used for linking controllers and hardware together. I don't know, I've never used it, so I can't really speak on it. Direct Wave. Direct Wave is a sampler that gives you a lot of control over manipulating your samples. You can add LFOs, delay, reverb, and chorus to each sample and add modulation to your sound. I think it's cool, but the UI does feel kind of confusing sometimes. Also, the only sound it comes with is a string orchestra if you don't have the instrument pack online, but it's okay because you can download the free sounds off of the FL's website. Overall, it's just going in cool. Drumax. Drumax is a percussion synthesizer. It's made for creating entire drum patterns in one plugin. Personally, I don't use this a lot, but there are some cool drum loops that could come in handy for drum and bass songs or for some cool drum textures. It's nice, but it's niche. Drumpad. Drumpad gives you full control over modeling drums, which is cool for producers that are into synthesis or sound design. I don't know too much about it, I don't really use it. FL Keys. FL Keys is nice. It's a very simple piano plugin with about 4 different piano sounds. None of them sound fantastic, but they do get the point across. I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bit biased because I did use FL Keys to make my most popular song, Sticks and Stones, so I do hold it pretty dearly. But I could still recognize that there are better, more realistic piano sounds out there, so I'm gonna put this in cool. It is nice to use. And do you know what else is nice to use? Melodics. Melodics is a desktop app that helps you build your skills with your MIDI keyboard. With over 1,500 courses, lessons, and exercises to choose from, Melodics covers every aspect of learning the piano, from learning the notes and finger placements to practicing scales and hand coordination. And everything's beautifully organized with different courses so you can improve exactly where you want to. Melodics keeps track of your accuracy and timing while you play, and gives feedback on what you need to work on. It makes learning the piano pretty fun and intuitive. And right now, Melodics has introduced songs, and you can learn how to play real songs from real artists. You can learn iconic riffs from TLC or bass lines from Thundercat, and Melodics will break it down to you note for note. The courses are also designed with different genres in mind, so if you want to practice jazz, hip-hop, reggae, or synthwave, Melodics has you covered. And the knowledge gained from Melodics can be used outside of the app, like working on your own music, jamming out in a studio session, or even performing live. If you want to try it out, there's a link in the description. It is free to download. FL Slayer. FL Slayer is one of those plugins that you can kind of tell is a bit obsolete. It's supposed to sound like an electric guitar, but it ends up sounding like a computer from the 80s trying to sound like an electric guitar. There's a few other plugins I can think of that can do this job better. I'm not too hyped about it. I'm putting this in not the vibe. Flex. Flex is a lovely, perfect newer addition to FL Studio. It's a sample-based, all-in-one plugin with a huge selection of sounds. It's almost like ImageLine's answer to ReFX Nexus or to Omnisphere. You can make whole songs just using Flex, and it has a ton of onboard effects and gets updated with new sounds pretty often. It's easily one of the best plugins in FL. FPC. FPC is FL Studio's built-in drum machine. It's got a lot of helpful drum presets, both in drum kits and in drum patterns. You can make some pretty cool drums in it, and it does the job very well. You can also drag and drop your own samples into it, so that's a plus. I'm putting this in very good. Fruitcake. Fruitcake is another drum synthesis plugin, but it's only kick-oriented. I would rank this higher, but there's already so much better and more complex plugins in FL that can make drums and not just kicks. So I'm kind of putting this in not the vibe. Fruity Dance. Fruity Dance is just a visual plugin. It doesn't do anything crazy, but it does have this little homie that dances to your beats. She's my friend, and she's always been there for me, S tier. Fruity Drum Synth Live. Fruity Drum Synth Live is a drum machine with a lot of Roland 808 and 909 drum sounds, which is cool, but there are a couple other drum machines that you can use that are already in FL. Hell, you could just use the channel rack and just import the drums. Personally, I never use it. Fruity DX10. Fruity DX10 is a pretty cool plugin. It's based on a few 80s FM synthesizers, making some pretty cool vintage sounding synths. It's great for those mellow R&B keys and pluck sounds. I put this in cool. Fruity Envelope Controller. I have no idea what I'm looking at. I've never used it. Next. Fruity Granulizer. Fruity Granulizer takes samples and chops them up into grains to get looped and repeated, creating granular synthesis. One thing I like about Granulizer is that there's no wrong way to use it. Just throw anything into it and start moving shit around, and boom, money come. I'ma put this in cool. Fruity Keyboard Controller. All it is a controller used for linking knobs and sliders on a given plugin. I don't know, I've never used it, just use automation clips. Fruity Slicer. Fruity Slicer is goated. It's simple to use and makes for some really cool sample chops. It's great for trap beats, boom bap, breakcore, and it's an all-around great plugin that's simple to use. I also want to give his flowers for putting a lot of people like myself onto Fruity Slicer. Goat producer, goat plugin, it just makes sense. Video Player. Video Player allows you to sync videos with your project. It sounds pretty interesting, but I've just never used it. I'm gonna look more into it. Fruity Voltage Controller. I've never used it, and I'm kind of scared to use it. Because when you boot it up, it does have this warning screen saying, if you don't know what you're doing, don't use this plugin. So I'm gonna stay in my lane and stay far away from it. GMS. GMS, more like goated motherfucking synthesizer. GMS is so good. It's got a nice selection of oscillators to choose from, with a lot of onboard effects and a lot of presets to use. When it comes to synthesis, the two plugins that I'm most comfortable using are 3X Oscillator and this. I like making pretty lush sounding synth keys and even some nice hover basses with it. It's definitely one of my go-tos, definitely one of my favorites. Harmless. Harmless was the first plugin I ever learned how to use in FL Studio. Back in my dubstep days, I watched countless tutorials on YouTube and learned how to make dubstep wobbles on Harmless. I could still do it today. The muscle memory is just kind of etched in my soul at this point. There are some cool sounds in this plugin, but everything does kind of sound harsh and tinny, or it just sounds very metallic and phasery. It's cool. Harmer. Harmless's bigger, younger brother. Harmer can do anything from basses to bells to supersaws. It's got a ton of onboard effects and gives you a ton of control. Super powerful synthesizer, S tier. MIDI out. MIDI out is used for being a MIDI out channel for other sounds. I don't really use this. I only ever use this to use Fruity LSD, which is weird in itself because why is that an effect if it's like a generator? I don't know. Mini synth. I love mini synth. It's great, it's reliable, and it's simple. I use it a lot for some super saw presets and for some of the pad presets. It doesn't sound the greatest, sometimes the sounds come out a little bit muffled, but it's reliable and I like it, so I'm putting it in A tier. Morphine. Morphine is an additive synth, which means you could stack a bunch of sounds together and manipulate them to create a really big or lush sound. Or whatever you want, really. Personally, I find additive synthesis a bit of a pain to learn, so I can only really judge this on the presets. All of the sounds have this nice, chill, mellow 80s feel. It's very warm, which can come in handy, but for me, it's a bit niche. Maybe other people will find more use out of it. Ogun. Ah, yes, the mastermind behind Autogun. It's all his fault for those hours of clicking through presets. But you know what? It turns out when you trim the fat of 4 billion presets and allow for some sound design, this plugin isn't that bad. You can make some pretty metallic sounding pads and plucks and drum sounds. It's cool, but I still don't use it a ton. I'm gonna put it a step above Autogun and put it in kinda niche. Patcher. Patcher is S tier. S tier. S tier plugin. Patcher allows you to make patches from one plugin or effect to another plugin in effect, and you can just control every parameter of that sound. It really lets you get creative with the sounds without having the limitations of one plugin with 10 effects. You can stack and layer and manipulate as much as you want with it, and it only takes up one plugin space. There's a bit of a learning curve with how to use it, but it's definitely worth learning. S tier. Plucked. Plucked is a simple plugin designed to make simple pluck sounds. I'm not too crazy about it. It usually just sounds very tinny and weak sounding. At its best, it sounds like a bad guitar, not the vibe. Poison. Poison is a subtractive synthesizer. So you start off with a big singular sound and then you can shape it into whatever you like. There's cool effects on it like delay and chorus, but I really like that it has this gate effect. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. There's some cool sounds in this here and there, like the gated sequencers and stuff, and I like to use it when I'm looking for something different, but it's not really in my main rotation. I'm gonna put this in B tier. Sakura. I know the homie Chu swears by Sakura, but I'm gonna be real, my guy. I don't see the hype. I think there's a couple of really cool sounds in it. I like how organic it sounds, and it makes some really cool ethnic string presets, but there's just so much junk you gotta get through to get to the good stuff. It's good, but definitely more useful than Sakura from Naruto. I'm gonna put this in B tier.
It looks like I finally caught up to the two of them.
Sour. Sour is a synthesizer based on vintage analog synths like the Moog. It's got a lot of good basic synth sounds in it. It's great for analog basses or synth brass. I don't use it all the time, but it's good to know. B tier. SimSynth. Similar to Sour, it's modeled after classic analog synthesizers, perfect for that vintage 80s sound. Personally, I like this a little bit more than Sour, and I like how clean the interface is and it's very simple to use. I use it from time to time, it gets the job done. B tier. SliceX. SliceX is a sampler that uses beat detection algorithms to find peaks and drum loops, allowing you to better chop drum samples. I don't really use this enough. I personally prefer Fruity Slicer over this. I know it's good, it's just not for me. Sound font player. Self-explanatory, it plays sound font files. Sure, sound fonts don't give you a lot of control over each sound like a plugin does, but it does help a lot with low CPU usage, so there is some good that comes with using sound fonts. So this plugin is only as good as the sound fonts you already have, so I do recommend downloading some free ones online. It's helpful. B tier. Citrus is a goated plugin. You can make any sound with it. It's got 6 oscillators and some great onboard effects. If I had to break it down from pros and cons, pros, super powerful synth, great for everything. Cons, it's FM synthesis, so it could be a headache to learn. Because of that, I could put it in S tier, but it is leaning a little bit more to A tier just because of how difficult it is to use. But the overall sounds that you can make with it are worth it. Toxic Biohazard. This is another 6 oscillator synthesizer. If you're looking at this for the first time, you're probably thinking, oh, this looks complicated. This looks like a spaceship, and you're absolutely right. But it's got some nice presets. Definitely worth using from time to time, but it's kind of niche. Transistor bass. This is a plugin modeled after bass synths like the Roland TB303. It's almost a complete one-to-one replica sound-wise to the 303, so that's pretty cool. I've never really used this or had a reason to use this plugin that much, but I did learn how to make the bass line from Daft Punk's Da Funk. Kinda niche. And lastly, Wave Traveler. Formerly known as Fruity Scratcher, Wave Traveler is a vinyl scratch simulator, creating scratch sounds on whatever you put into it. I think it's pretty cool, but I never really use it. I feel more comfortable using Grossbeat, to be honest. So now that I'm done with the list, I want to make some last minute adjustments to it. First off, I'm bumping Sound Font Player down to C tier. Having to import your own sounds with little manipulation options is kinda niche. Sour and Harmless are getting bumped up to A tier. I think I did downplay how powerful these synths are and how helpful they can be in hip hop and electronic music, so let's bump them up. And lastly, Autogun is getting bumped up from D tier. Nah, I'm just playing. That is the tier list. Thank you so much for watching. Like I mentioned earlier, I'll have a link to the tier list below if you want to make your own. Like the video. If this does well, I'll do another one with just the effects in FL Studio so you can see where I put Sound Goodizer. We all know the answer to that. But yeah, that's all for now. My name is Praxi, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.